Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name is George Robson.
I'm Peter Siegel.
So Peter, we talk about the economy a lot on the Daily Cash Flow.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's easy to depersonalize the economy, talk about it as if it's something that happens out there. In what ways have you noticed the economy impact individuals and businesses over the last few weeks?
I mean, George, the economy is such a personal thing. So when I think about how the economy impacts us individually, I mean, just look at what's happened recently. People aren't employed when they're not employed. They're not earning money when they're not earning money. They're not spending money. And the trickle down from there is continuous. I mean, I'm reminded of friends that I know that were planning on getting married. They had deposits on wedding venues and with florists and with caterers. And now that event gets canceled, they can't just get their money back because the venue then puts deposits down on furnishings and audio systems, and the florist has to buy their supplies and the raw materials. And so we can't just automatically and instantly unwind all of these things now because we're no longer employed or because we're earning less. We're all so tied together, and everything in our economy is so tied together. It's really a lesson on, in some ways, on how fragile we are, and how much we rely on and need all of the things that are in our lives to function and to be healthy and to be financially strong, because when they're not, it directly impacts us. I mean, we've got kids that are supposed to be in camp for the summer. Parents have put deposits on camp programs, can't get their deposits back. The camps are struggling to be able to keep the deposit money and say, hey, we'll apply it for the summer 2021. I mean, it's not so easy just to call up someone and say, send me my money back. I mean, the chain of events that occurs when you make a payment or make a deposit is so far and so deep and so impactful for so many parts of our economy that you can't just automatically and quickly unwind that. You've got school that's starting up again, perhaps, in the fall. What do you do for these school programs where it was private money that was required to secure a space for your kid to be in school? I mean, you can't just call and get that money back. We don't know what's happening. The schools don't know what's happening. They can't send the money back. Maybe they're going to need the money to teach your kid. Maybe they're not. They're going to have to defer a program. Maybe they're going to have to hire other resources and transition from in-class to online. So everything is so intertwined and so fragile, and it's been really interesting to see. I
was going to ask, as a real estate business owner and someone that's really steeped in real estate and specifically multifamily, how do those connections apply in that sphere?
Well, sure. I mean, we're seeing retail tenants and office tenants have an inability to pay rent. So the owners of retail buildings and office buildings are getting little to no income right now. They've had to cut deals with their tenants to slice and dice April, May, and June rent, and probably beyond April, May, and June, onto the back end of a lease. They've had to do workouts. They've had to do security deposit captures. They've had to, in some cases, take equity positions in tenants that they felt were soon to be healthy again and doing business again, to somehow secure the April, May, June, July rent payments that they weren't getting as a result of the pandemic. So we're seeing a lot of creativity being deployed from the able-bodied property owners and experienced managers who are in touch with their customers, their tenants, and able to assess strength and weaknesses among their tenant rosters and then cut deals with tenants accordingly so that tenants are able to stay in business and these property owners are able to continue to pay for insurance and municipal property taxes, which then, as we know, goes and pays for police, fire, and all sorts of other community services that we need. And on the other hand, multifamily building owners have experienced far less of a hit in rents during the pandemic but have still had to deploy different tactics to try and maintain collectability. So in New York and New Jersey, places like this, the governors have ordered that landlords are now able to go in and use security deposit money and apply security deposit money towards rent payments. The intent and the hope is once that we get past this pandemic, that tenants will be able to replenish security deposits from the amounts that were taken to pay rent, and that people will be employed again, earning money, able to pay rent. But whether you're an office, retail, or multifamily, again, you just can't unwind payments and cancel rent or waive rent. I mean, rent has to be paid because that's what goes and pays the municipal property taxes, bank mortgages, insurance that's required in case there's a fire or some sort of hazard or liability situation. Lights have to be on. The boiler has to get gas in order to cook the water to make steam and create heat. I mean, all of these things need to happen, and those things are a direct result of rental income that occurs from tenants paying rent. So it's really an interesting lesson in how tied we all are together with everything, individuals, businesses, businesses to businesses, individuals to individuals. I mean, it's a very fascinating and wide web of connectivity that happens that we're seeing recently having been fractured a little bit.
CoreSite Research recently put out a report that estimates that 25,000 retail stores could potentially close for good in 2020.
I've seen it.
Yeah, they said around 60% of those are closures in malls.
Right.
It's being called retail apocalypse. What do you make of those numbers, and what are you thinking as it pertains to real estate?
Yeah, so we've seen for quite a while now that traditional brick and mortar retail has been under attack from the internet and online sales. So it's been a really tough environment for the past 15, 20 years anyway. Malls have been really fighting to maintain their relevancy in our culture today. I mean, every singular market around the country has its one good mall that sort of always does well. I mean, Texas has the Galleria, Florida's got a few different markets between Aventura and Palm Beach Gardens, and then you've got Oak Brook, you've got Short Hills Mall in New Jersey here is one of the higher performing malls. And then you've got the one and only South Coast Plaza in California, which has got the highest sales per square foot of any mall in the country. Short of these few examples, malls are on their way out, and they've been on their way out. Even now with this pandemic culture that we're in right now, people don't want to be gathering in crowded public places, and malls are typically that. Small strip centers, regional, local strip centers, forget about it. I mean, these are packed with tenants who are small businesses who are really having a tough time. So sure, 25,000, I would think it'd be more than 25,000 small businesses closing. And sure, 60% of them occurring in malls? Absolutely, the malls are finished. They're all trying to be repurposed and reimagined as live, work, play spaces where they're gonna build housing and public amenities, public space, and restaurants and parking, and design these centers so that you can live there and sort of never leave the campus. We're seeing that in lots of places around the country right now with these big developments coming online that are striving to provide all sorts of walkable amenities and cultural services and features to the residential component. So malls are not long for the world. They're a thing of the past. And to the extent that they're part of our current existence and future, it's really going to be limited to those few examples in each market that we talked about a moment ago. And other than those examples, malls are on the way out for sure.
So that 40% that's left, what do you think they're doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about small businesses here. These are bars and restaurants and 1 or 2 store retail operations, and a lot of family-run businesses, a lot of entrepreneurial efforts that have upstarted in the past several years. They're just undercapitalized. You know, it's funny, the banks and the governments tell us to, as individuals, tell us to have 6 months of expenses on hand so that in case an emergency comes around, we can weather out 6 months while we look for a new job or while whatever the emergency is subsides and gets behind us. The funny thing is that businesses aren't given the same advice. So we see a lot of these small businesses that are undercapitalized, that don't have lots of capital resources or availability of capital in the markets, and an emergency comes like a pandemic, they have to close, and they either can't reopen or they reopen for a couple of months, but they can't sustain it. It's a tough position to be in, but the lesson that I take away from all of this is two things. Yeah, you want to have these 6 months or 8 months or a year or whatever the number of months of capital in the bank to get through a storm when a storm hits. But you also want to have other income streams and other ways to have income coming in every month. And for me, it's been being heavily invested in multifamily real estate so that despite what's happening in pandemic 2020 with businesses being closed and some of my other investments that I have that aren't multifamily real estate investments have not been paying over the past several months during the pandemic. My real estate investments have been. Wouldn't it be great if all of us as individuals had access to some real estate investments that were continuing to provide us cash flow during this crazy time? So small businesses who are undercapitalized and who don't have other sources of income, as well as individuals who don't have secondary and additional sources of income, are all feeling a lot of pain right now, and it's going to be very difficult for quite a while. So what I've learned throughout all of this and what I've seen through all of this is that you have to have multiple sources of revenue, multiple sources of income available to you so that when your business has to close and when your job has to end, that you've got income coming in. And wouldn't it be great if we all had access to income producing investments? I love real estate, and I encourage everybody to consider having income producing real estate as part of their lives. And this is a great time to really see why.
Now, on social media, or really not just on social media, but kind of all over the place, you hear this advice to take on good debt, avoid bad debt.
Yeah, we've talked about that here.
Yeah, we've talked about this just a few weeks ago here. And then just right now, we talked about needing or to have 6 months of capital saved up to weather a storm.
Yeah.
How do you strike that balance between taking on debt and knowing when to put away and not expend capital?
Well, the criteria for taking on debt, it doesn't change. You only take on debt when you can buy property, plant, and equipment that allows you to either grow your business or get positive cash flow. Don't take on debt for a lifestyle purchase, and don't take on debt to do anything else that doesn't provide you with positive cash flow. Only take on debt for property, plant, and equipment purchases to get income from. And we can do another segment about that in detail. We've done a couple of segments about that already. Certainly, we're not saying don't take on debt to fund your 6 months because you have no positive cash flow through that. We're not saying take on debt to pay off some other obligations. It almost sounds like either a Ponzi scheme or one of these gambler situations where someone who's a gambling addict will just continue to borrow money to gamble, lose it, and then have to borrow money to try and gamble to take the winnings to pay off the first guy. It's a never-ending cycle. Only take on debt if you're buying property, plant, and equipment, which allows you to increase your positive cash flow.
So Peter, interest rates are low right now. All-time low.
Yes, they are.
You've spoken about the importance of acquisition. What are you buying right now?
Yeah, good question. We're seeing not that much available right now. The things that I am seeing are extraordinarily overpriced. There's very little supply in my market for opportunities to purchase new buildings. I'm seeing some distressed things, very, very few. They were distressed before the pandemic. They just happen to be hitting the market now. They're not distressed because of the pandemic. And also, they're overpriced as well. As an investor, I'm very conscious of the metrics of the underwriting that I do to make a purchase. And for people out there who are looking to get into multifamily or any kind of business, make sure that the metrics of your investment, of your business, of your building, make sure that it stands on its own 2 feet. Cheap financing and low interest rates does not make a shitty deal great now. And we're seeing that the business community and the brokerage community is trying to push that on us. Like, hey, I get calls all the time, Peter, come look at this deal. And because I haven't seen a lot, I'm going to go look at it because I'm hungry and supply constrained for new opportunities. So I'll go look at it. And it's a piece of crap, and it doesn't stand on its own 2 feet. It has no rent. It's got high expenses. It has no net operating income. But yet there's some huge price associated with it that I'm unwilling to pay. And ultimately the broker will say to me, but financing is so inexpensive right now. Cheap financing does not make a shitty deal good at all, ever. Focus on cap rate, focus on EBITDA, focus on net operating income. I mean, these are the solid, traditional, fundamental metrics that drive good business decisions for the long term. As soon as you get off of focusing on those things and you start thinking that interest rates are so low, I'm just going to buy no matter what it is, you've got big problems. So I haven't been buying that much right now for a whole host of different reasons. Valuations and pricing have been all over the place. We're a little unsure of how to value assets. Banks are unsure how to value assets. Appraisers are unsure how to value assets. That needle is moving every day. We're also seeing not a whole lot of availability of new assets come onto the marketplace. So there's a supply constraint feature in the marketplace right now that is artificially propping up whatever the valuations are that you're hearing. And so I think you just got to sit back and wait it out for your moment and look at all the opportunities that you can look at. It's a numbers game. If you look at 100 deals and find one, that's what you got to do. Make sure you have the 100 flowing your way. But it's never a good idea to excuse traditional and fundamental underwriting practices because interest rate pricing is cheap. So don't make that mistake.
I feel like a broken record saying this so many times, but we're in the middle of a crisis. Things are so chaotic.
George, you sound like a broken record.
I know. It's just,
why do you say that so much?
I'm really looking forward to not having to say that in the future.
Me too.
But as a leader in your industry and in your community, what has been like one of the most important things, or a few of the most important things that you've used to navigate this situation?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think to get through any time period, to be successful, to be a leader and exit successfully from some sort of problematic time, you need a lot of different skill sets. The one that I look back at right now and say, wow, I'm glad we did a lot of that, was really anticipating. I mean, I have a 1-day horizon, a 1-week horizon, a 1-month horizon, a 6-month horizon, a 1-year horizon, 3-5-year horizon. I've got my eye on all of those different time frames, and I got to see what's coming at me. But I think anybody who's successful and anybody who's trying to lead an organization has to have their eye on the ball of what's right in front of them right then and there, and they also have to be looking out on these various different horizons. If you're not looking out on the horizon, you're not anticipating. You got to anticipate, and we know from history that leaders anticipate and losers react. And what good is it if the show comes and goes and the main event comes and goes and we're sitting there looking at a report talking about what happened 1, 3, 6 months ago? I mean, it's already happened. What are we going to do about it? We're not going to do anything about it is the answer. But if we've got a plan, if we're anticipating, if we're trying to get a feel for what's coming down the pike with our customers, with our vendors and suppliers, with the general aggregate market, with macroeconomic business conditions, with microeconomic business conditions, with our municipalities in which we operate. I mean, we have to have our finger on all of those pulses. And when we do, we're going to get information. Information is key. Without information, we can't make decisions. And we have to make decisions at times of crises and then during normal times when this pandemic's behind us and we're hopefully back to normal or some sense of normal soon. We need data. We need information. We need to be really on top of what's happening in so many different areas of our business and in our lives to be able to be successful. So I would say, George, that being able to anticipate and being able to see far out and multiple horizons is a key skill that I've been able to do recently, and that I know that a lot of my successful peers have been doing also.
All right. Want to move on to ZestQuest, Peter?
Always.
Fantastic. What are 3 things that live up to the hype for you?
3 things that live up to the hype for me. The most important things to me, I think, are there's never too much time spent with family. I love that. There's no hype associated with that for me. It's just a great thing, and I know that everybody else that enjoys being with their family, and I think we all do more of it because it's great. It's a good energy. Love's a great thing. Being with your family's a great thing, and the more you do that stuff, the more it's going to fuel your ability to do other things in life. I mean, it's good stuff for me. I love being with my daughter more than anything, and I find that time with her to be so rejuvenating, and it gives me so much happiness and joy and strength that I can take that to other aspects of my life. So no hype there at all. For me, I love being outdoors, and so any chance I get to be in the water surfing with friends or on a mountain skiing on a bluebird day, I mean, is a great moment. And I encourage everybody to be outdoors and seek moments in nature. I mean, it's quiet, it's beautiful, air can be crisp. The colors that you see, the things that you smell, the sounds that you hear, they're all necessary on a cellular level for us to regenerate and rejuvenate and take that and go elsewhere in our lives with a lot of strength and confidence. So I love being in nature. And the third thing I think is just being kind, being generous with people. It's so important for us to remember that at the end of the day, at the end of our business battles, at the end of our job battles, at the various challenges that we have, no matter what they may be, just to be kind. You never know what someone else is experiencing or going through, so be kind. And things that are out there affecting someone are affecting all of us, so just be kind. And when you have the opportunity to be kind and generous, if you're so lucky enough to be able to be generous as well, I think being generous is something that gives you back far more than what it costs you. And I think that those are important things to remember as you go through really any time in life. So for me, I just love being outdoors, love being with my family. I try to be nice and kind in my day and my dealings, and I love what I get back from it, and being generous with those people and things and organizations around me that I value. It gives me a lot of joy and pleasure as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
All right, last question. How do you disagree with someone effectively? Are there ways that you've been able to disagree with others while maintaining a connection, while maintaining a relationship with those people?
How to disagree? Well, I think you just got to disagree. I think you got to be honest. I think you have to be able to look someone in the eye, know what you're talking about, be able to have a dialogue with them, explain why you disagree. I mean, look, if you just disagree to disagree, we all know people like this in our lives. They're sort of Debbie Downers, they're negative people, and disagreeing is something that they do often and they do it well. But for me, if I'm going to disagree with you, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to base it on things that are concrete and important and things that I think you'll find important. And if I can convert you, I'll convert you, and if not, then we'll agree to disagree. It's one of the beautiful things about life. We really don't have to do anything that we don't want to do. We can choose to do what we want, and we can make decisions every day that are good for us. So if we're going to disagree with others, disagree in a way that maybe you can swing it your way. Facts, data, having a basis for your disagreement is...
Clearly articulating your argument.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Don't just disagree to be a pain in the ass, but disagree if you feel like you've got a better solution, propose the solution. If you've got a better way, propose the better way. I mean, that's how we grow and succeed. I just want to do the best idea. I don't want it to be my idea. If you have a better idea, we'll do yours, but tell me why it's better, and let's talk it out. Let's disagree and hopefully agree at the end of it what the better and best way is to go. But
so what I'm hearing is seek the solution rather than try and win the argument. You know,
people that, I mean, this is you didn't ask this question. Yes, I agree with what you said. Yeah. People that say no and don't propose a solution are difficult people to work with. They're difficult people to be around. They're difficult people to have in your organization, your company, in your life. We all have different viewpoints. We're all going to agree and disagree so many different times during the day. Yeah, you got to propose a solution. Tell me what the answer is. Give me three options. Show me a chart that backs up what you're saying. But if you just say, no, I don't want to, no, I can't, no, we shouldn't, I disagree with that, period. I mean, it's very tough to have a relationship. It's very tough to move the ball forward. It's very tough to have growth and success when disagreements without data or saying no without basis just comes into your life. Yeah, you got to be able to have solutions. And I can tell you that if you're at a job in your company, or if you're a leader in your organization or your business, and you're saying no without facts and backup and basis, and if you're having disagreements without articulating why, you're making it very tough for yourself.
All right, well, it's
Yeah.
good advice for us all to take right now. Appreciate you taking the time, Peter.
Thanks, George. Thanks,
I'll
everybody.
See you next time.
All right.